Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's class. This is 17 o'clock, and we are going to start right about now. So please, party chairpersons, inform your party members to join into class right now because class starts now. Our facilitator is already here, and you won't want to miss out on this. So our topic for today is the fourth estate in a democracy, which we have Mr. Camry Apollo who will be taking us in this discourse. So very quickly, I'll be introducing our facilitator for today's class, Mr. Camry Apollo. He's a broadcast journalist who focuses on development journalism. He's also a communication strategist and media trainer with a background in architecture. He believes he has 1.5 decade long experience in the agro-commodities export market, mining sector, and final information technology sector opened up life's diverse perspectives and prepared him for his true passion in live journalism. Camry finds the inner workings of the human mind absolutely fascinating and says he possesses a more than casual but less than formal interest in psychology. He considers himself a patriot who takes time out to volunteer as a mentor for a National Youth Service Corps leadership program, an assignment that is very dear to his heart. In 2013, Camry started out as an anchor on We FM 106.3, a talk radio station in Abuja. He was named head of programs and subsequently head of station, a position he held until he left the organization in 2021. Today, he is the head of news and general manager of Radio Now 95.3 FM, a Lagos-based media house that focuses on national development, social consciousness, and advocacy. His motto informs how he lives his life: live well, love well, and die well. So, ladies and gentlemen, our facilitator for today, Mr. Camry Apollo. Welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Charlia. Much appreciated. And also to the management of the Electoral College, as well as the distinguished members of this class. Everyone, good evening. My name is Camry Apollo. Once again, I'm absolutely honored to be your facilitator for this topic, the fourth estate in a democracy. I'll start by telling you how we expect the next hour plus to go. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, okay? So I'll start off by talking about what the term, the fourth estate, means. I will also do my best to talk to you about who a journalist is and the rules that regulate and govern our craft. From there, we'll move on to the effects of the fourth estate on governance and agenda setting. That will be a very, very interactive session, and I'm absolutely looking forward to hearing from some of you. Lots of people here from political parties, so lots of people aspiring to lead in one form or the other, one part of this country or the other. So I'm looking forward to that part. I will round off the lecture by talking about information management. I think it's a very, very important part of the engagement this evening because of so much that's going on, especially with the advent of AI. My organization, as I speak to you right now, we have a robust AI program that we've just put together, and we've just taken on, incidentally, a new set of interns, which we do every year, to put them through media and so on and so forth. So we are positively trying to see ways of integrating it. Lots of people not too aware. They don't know too much. They don't know enough, I should say, about AI. So there are a lot of uninformed opinions out there about AI, most of it not too good. We tend to look at the negative, but there's a huge positive as well. All right, so without taking up any more time, I'll just jump right in. So let's start with what the fourth estate means. What does it mean? Well, the term, the fourth estate, it refers to the power that the news media has. Before I go on, I will ask that you pay very close attention to the terminologies I use. As an information manager, I take a lot of care on how I phrase and how I name certain things. A lot of things get misconstrued, they get lost in translation and misunderstood and so on and so forth, because we like to use certain phrases interchangeably. So I try to be as careful as possible. So again, the power of the fourth estate of the realm refers to the power of news media. That's really where it comes from. And a couple of people in history have been given the credit with coming up with that phrase. The first person is a British parliamentarian, member of parliament, Edmund Burke, in the 18th century. And the second person is an English writer, William Hazlitt, the following century, 19th century. So what do they mean? Why do they come up with that phrase? Well, in most democracies, constituted power is divided among three arms of government, yes? We've got the judiciary, of which we've got a female Chief Justice now, Her Lordship Justice Kekere Ekun. Interesting times for us. So we have the judiciary, we have the executive, and we also have the legislature. That constitutes three arms of government, or you can call it three estates, if you will. The estates could be our modern day realm. The country's a realm. So these three realms, these three estates, these three arms, they all have specific functions which they carry out, or should carry out, in the best interest of the people. That's how it works. One arm is not more important than the other. They've all got their roles. And the principle of things like separation of powers and the ability of the three arms to apply themselves to service of the people, this is absolutely crucial to national development. During your time with the Electoral College, you're being exposed to different aspects of governance. So I don't need to belabor that issue. Now, this being the case, how then did they come up with that term? You know, the fourth arm of government, or the fourth estate of the realm. In the 19th century, Thomas Carlyle, he's a British historian. He made reference to Edmund Burke's coining of the phrase with a statement. Edmund Burke made a statement when he looked at the press. This was in the 19th century. Edmund Burke said that the reporters' gallery, which observes parliamentary proceedings, he said that gallery was more powerful than the three estates in the land at that time. Remember, this is the UK. At that time, the three estates were the king. They operated a monarchy. So the three estates were the king, the clergy, and the commoners. Okay, give me a second. My apologies, unscheduled interruption by a member of staff. So once again, Edmund Burke made a statement about the reporters' gallery which oversaw Parliament. The gallery is like a gantry that runs around the topmost levels of Parliament, so the people standing in that gantry can look down into the proceedings of Parliament. That's where it was. That's where the reporters were sat, the gantry looking down at the proceedings of Parliament. So Edmund Burke says the people, the reporters in that gallery were more powerful than the three estates in the land. That's an interesting observation. Again, the estates were the king, the clergy, and the commoners. The word commoners refers to the House of Commons. Does anyone know why they call it Commons, the House of Commons? In my course of broadcasting, there's a term I tend to use when I refer to your average Joe. Okay, that's a term used to describe a person, a person of no particular interests, and so on and so forth. I notice here in Nigeria, we refer to ourselves as ordinary Nigerians. And for someone like me, I think in that context, it's quite derogatory. So I like to use the term the everyday Nigerian. Nobody's ordinary. We are all unique. We all have our gifts. We all have our flaws. So I like to use the term the everyday Nigerians. So back to the word commoners. The House of Commons refers to, that phrase commoners. Why do they call it commons? Well, they call it commons because it represents people that were elected from communities, or communes as they were called at that time. So people chosen, people elected from the communities is what gave rise to the word commons. It doesn't mean they are ordinary. It doesn't mean they are common folks or this, that, the other. No. It's a reference to where they come from, not who they are and what they represent. If anything, it's more powerful than the House of Lords, for those who may not know. So back to Mr. Burke, the member of Parliament. Why did he say the people who stood on the gantry, the reporters, why did he say they are more powerful? Well, he said they are more powerful because basically they have a lot of influence over the people. The influence the media, sorry, the reporters have over the people is derived from the service they provide. They take information from these proceedings and they take the information to the people. The people are not physically present when deliberations are going on in the House of Commons, but the reporters are. So the reporters are the conduit for information. Imagine the House focused on a particular issue and somebody follows the proceedings and then goes to report whatever they want. Let's say the House is concerned about infant mortality rate and they spend 2 hours talking about that. And then the next item on their order paper, on their agenda, may be a discussion to do with raising the taxes of the people. So they spend 2 hours on infant mortality, but they spend 5 minutes on raising taxes and they say, all right, look, let's not raise these taxes at all, but we need to increase the revenue of the state. So let's increase it by, let's say, 0.1%. A reporter could go and tell you, well, they spent a long time deliberating the increase of taxes, and they also touched on or handles the issue of infant mortality. That is an improper representation of what happened. Clearly, the men spent their time, given their time mostly to infant mortality rate. And the issue of taxes was unpleasant to them, but it's something they had to do. So how the reporter represents what happened is very important because the people are not there, but the reporters are. So that's the power, the influence that Edwin Burke was referring to. The truth is, the people only know what they are told by the press. That's how it is. People are not physically present when these deliberations are going on. So ever since then, the Fourth Estate has grown in its role of probing, its role of questioning the activities of the three arms of government. And by doing this, it makes government accountable to the people. For the politically minded ones amongst us, let us also be aware that the press draws its power from our Constitution. Through our Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, as amended, gives life to our press and media. And it's all contained in Chapter 2, Section 22, which says, the press, radio, television, and other agencies of mass media shall, at all times, be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. That's the part of the Constitution that deals with the power of the press. So it's a constitutional matter. Now, news media, again, I'm using my terms very deliberately. News media has been called the guardian of democracy and the defender of public interest. It's very important at this stage to draw the distinction between news media and social media. Many of us, we have a social media presence, but that's different from news media. So let me use layman terms. In very, very basic terms, news media is called the fourth estate of the realm because it reports news that's been generated by journalists. That's people who work in newspapers, news magazines, news agencies, news channels, and so on and so forth. They've been trained to do something in a particular way and they are regulated. Social media, on the other hand, comprises news that's generated by anyone who can basically create and share content. That's the main, simple, layman difference. Once again, the key difference here is that news media is made up of journalists. And that takes me to another question. Who is a journalist? What is journalism, really? I don't know if any of you have studied mass comm, but I always like to engage people, students of mass communication in my lectures because by training, I'm an architect. I stumbled onto media and found out I had a knack and a drive for journalism. So I had to go and acquire those skills. So I'm not a mass comm graduate. And many times they say I'm a party crasher, a gate crasher who just stumbled on their world. I don't know, you make up your own mind. So again, who's a journalist? A journalist is a person, someone who investigates, who collects and presents information as a news story. In my industry, when Chalia introduced me, that's broadcasting, there are many people who are not journalists. Again, I started out as a presenter. Today, I'm a broadcast journalist. Why? Because I've acquired the necessary skills and training to pursue what I consider to be my one true passion, which is getting to the roots of things and, bringing it to light. Because I believe a better educated, a better informed people make better choices. If we can collectively lift up the intellectual standards of the country, we will see life start to improve. So it's all about knowledge. It's all about information. It's all about education for me. That's what drives me. I love educating. So this is my passion in journalism. So again, I'm a broadcast journalist because I have acquired those skills in the training. But some presenters can call themselves broadcasters, but that doesn't automatically make them journalists. An OAP, as they are called sometimes, that's an on-air personality, is not always a journalist. A journalist can be a broadcaster, a journalist can be an OAP, but not all OAPs are journalists. A journalist is a journalist by virtue of what they do and by by certification they may have received. But again, that's a pretty gray area. So journalists, like the public, that's everyday Nigerians, have the right to free speech. In fact, free speech is one of the founding principles of the press. It's one of the founding principles of the press. But here's the thing. With that right to free speech also comes a huge responsibility. And that responsibility is closely regulated. Organizations like the National Press Council, National Broadcasting Commission, they regulate Nigeria's press. In the first week of April, that was last year, the Nigeria Press Organization, which is made up of the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, and the Nigerian Union of Journalists, they formed a 9-man board of the established National Media Complaints Commission. They came up with that commission so that the commission can regulate our industry. As time goes on, their ability to self-regulate will be put to the test. So they basically regulate and oversee the space I operate in. And that's the thing with the press, with news media. Social media, on the other hand, is not regulated by the same laws which regulate journalism. Social media has its own regulator. I call that civil law. It's pretty straightforward. Early this year, the president's chief of staff, that's Femi Gbajabiamila, he was talking about social media, and he says, social media has become a societal menace and must be regulated. Now, he was speaking at the book launch of the former Lagos State Governor, Babatunde Fashola. The book is called Nigerian Public Discourse, The Interplay of Empirical Evidence and Hyperbole. I think it's a very important title. I urge you all, try and give it a good read, because it will deepen, I guarantee it will deepen your knowledge of information management, especially from the perspective of governance. So hyperbole, basically, it features quite often on interactive programs on radio. In my humble opinion, I think a bit too much, truth be told. We're humans, we make mistakes, but for talk radio, it's for radio, not just talk radio, there's a bit too much hyperbole, in my opinion. A popular example for me is the phrase, I don't know how many of you would have heard this phrase on radio. When there's a situation going on, this phrase pops up. The government is not doing anything. I don't know how many of you have heard that phrase. The government is not doing anything. Another one is, Nigerians are dying. So this is hyperbole. They're sweeping statements. The last one, that is Nigeria is dying, that's used to describe the state of the economy. If taxes go up, we're going to say Nigerians are dying, when we are making reference to a hike in the cost of living, a hike in expenses, and so on and so forth. So they're very sweeping statements, and in my opinion, they're not as effective as achieving any sort of meaningful or sustainable change, because they are very vague. I think if you are to address a problem, you must first understand the problem, come up with a strategy to take on the problem, and then apply the strategy and amend where necessary. That will get you results. It's a science. It's not an emotional thing. You wait for somebody who is considered to be impassionate, doesn't care about your well-being. If you're sitting around waiting for that person to suddenly be visited by a wash of redemption and be filled with remorse at this criminal thing they are doing, I think you're wasting your time, really. So it must be strategically tackled. And sweeping statements is not the way to tackle problems. This is the challenge with the press. Okay? So the thing is, with hyperbole, facts are facts and are very important. A fact is a fact. But here's the thing, our perception of the facts are sometimes arguably more important than the facts themselves. This is it. How you feel about a thing, especially when it comes to governance, in our neck of the woods here in Nigeria, I believe sometimes it's more important than the actual fact of the thing. Because you're talking about people's emotions. If the government does something and you feel a certain way, the reason behind the action taken by the government, let's say they're trying to self-correct the economy and they throw us into hardship, for example, if you feel that the government is trying to get rid of you, the government is trying to make sure I lose my house, lose my job, lose my family, lose my life, if that's what you feel, that feeling is going to be more powerful than the actual facts of what the government is doing. So whether the government is really trying to take your life, take your job, take your this, that, the other, or not, becomes a secondary issue. The primary issue then becomes how you feel. And I think that's what the government needs to speak to. The government needs to speak to changing people's mindsets and perceptions rather than just simply going with the facts. Because again, perceptions are very powerful things. All right? Perceptions are very, very powerful things. So again, they are sometimes more important than the facts themselves. Now, there is a psychological cost to the propagation of extravagant exaggeration or hyperbole. We'll have that conversation on another day. If we keep telling ourselves this thing, which is not a fact, but it's how we feel, it has a cost. So the fact is very important, but we need to pay heed to how people feel about the fact and find a way to get them to see the full picture. Okay? So let's come back to journalism in the fourth estate. As a regulated industry, it's governed by certain principles. And that takes me to the next part. I believe the 5 principles that I will proceed to list now pretty much cover it. Different people have different principles they will draw, but I think these 5 principles pretty much cover everything for me. That's the 5 core principles that govern the fourth estate of the realm. I am going to rely on this work, which I've taken from the Ethical Journalism Network. So I give them all the credits. These are not my words. It's theirs. I just agree with the way they have presented them. Okay. And that's another thing with my industry. There are far too many people plagiarizing work. If the work is not yours, you need to give credit to the person who did it. To present work of another person as your own is called plagiarism. It's not only intellectual theft. If you have ever sat down to write or document something, you know the pains it takes for somebody to come and appropriate that as their own, I think is a criminal act and should be condemned. And I do that at all times with the students I teach here at work. So let's go back to the principles. Truth and accuracy. Now, journalists cannot always guarantee truth. Okay? But getting the facts right is the cardinal principle of our profession. A journalist must always strive for accuracy. We must give all the relevant facts that we have and also ensure that these facts are being checked. When the facts cannot be corroborated, we should say so. If there's an unfolding story and I come across certain information that I feel, I have certain rules about processing breaking story, and the information I feel may border on saving lives, I may consider going to air to broadcast that information. As I broadcast it, I will say this information has not been verified at this time, but here's what we have been made aware of. XYZ is happening. A building may be on fire in this area. Could the relevant authorities please direct their attention there? Or maybe anybody in that area, can you please call up and confirm? Pictures, videos would be highly welcome. Let's save lives when we can. That's how I would approach breaking news that I feel is life-threatening. If it's not life-threatening, I would rather wait to verify. So truth and accuracy is key for us, not speed. The next principle that governs the fourth estate of the realm is independence. Journalists must always be independent voices. We can't act formally or informally on behalf of special interests, whether those interests are political, corporate, or cultural. We can't act in those interests. We are compelled to declare any biases we may have to our editors or the audience. This is the expectation. If we have any political affiliations, we're expected to declare that as well. I can't go and write a story in a political party without declaring any affiliation I have with a political party, even if it's not that one. I must declare it. If, for example, my wife is a card-carrying member of party A and I'm a journalist, not a card-carrying member of any other party, I need to declare that because the connection is very clear. She's my spouse. We are very close. So it's going to be difficult for me to write about a political party, whether it's hers or not, without regard for certain biases and positions. But here's the thing. If you don't declare it and people get to find out, they will say your work is tainted, in which case the aim's been defeated. So it must be declared. If you've got affiliations, again, any financial arrangements or personal information that may constitute a conflict of interest, it must be declared. If you can't proceed without checking your biases, you must also do the right thing. I'll give an example. The former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, he's going through his travails now. When he was picked up, another person who is very, very close to him was arrested. I'll keep his name to myself for now. He's a friend of mine, went to school together, and he's royalty, basically. So he's quite highly placed, financially as well as traditionally. He was arrested as well. His name has been mostly out of the press because he's done quite a good job. So when the conversation came up during one of our daily editorial meetings, we have our editorial meetings where we determine what we will discuss for the day, how we did the day before, and so on and so forth. Take editorial decisions, just like a regular newsroom. When the conversation for the CBN governor came up, I had to recuse his associates, the friend of mine. When it came up, when he was arrested, I stood up and I recused myself. And the team, they were quite shocked. And I said, well, I need to recuse myself. You guys need to decide how you're going to handle this conversation. I'm recusing myself because I know this person. I'm very close to him. And it will not be fair for me to sit down here while we plan collectively and strategize how to go forward with a topic. Treat it the same way we treat any topic. I left the room. So that is me recusing myself because I didn't want a conflict of interest. I didn't want anyone to say, but he's a friend of Camry's. No. That should not taint the good work of journalism we are doing. So in order to spare myself that and the organization, that I will recuse myself. So the reporting must be independent. The next principle that governs the fourth estate of the realm is fairness and impartiality. Most stories have at least two sides. And while there may not be any obligation to present every possible side in every piece, the stories must be balanced and they must also add context. I don't know if you've kept up to date with what's going on with the Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, Honorable Benjamin Kalu. He's taken a media house to court because it says they've put out a video of him, which is a misrepresentation of the conversation he had with a TV station. This is a radio station he's taken to court. And the radio station says, hang on a second, we're not the ones that came up with this stuff. We got it from a TV station. The TV station came out and said, hey, you guys, I don't know what you guys did. You took out our watermark. You edited the conversation the way you wanted, and you've presented what you wanted to present. So what you've ended up with is not the complete picture of the conversation we had with this man. So basically, the radio station, it's too early to judge because the matter will go through the process. Basically, what it is that the radio station is being accused of being unfair because they have not presented the position of the speaker in its proper context. They've taken it out of context and done what they've done. So we'll watch that one closely. So again, objectivity may not always be possible for us journalists, but we need to be very, very fair and balanced in what we do. We must be balanced. We must be fair. Biases are powerful things. We're human beings. If you are faced with something that touches your humanity, for example, let's say you hear a minor has been defiled and killed in the process of sexual defilement. This is a story that will rent your heart. Anyone that hears it anywhere in the world who's got a heart, it will rent your heart. Odds are you will be worked up, you'll be angry, you'll be ticked off, absolutely ticked off. So, sorry about that. So it will be difficult to speak about that impartially. This person, the criminal, whoever it is, the suspect at that time, that's the technical classification of such a person. The suspect is expected to be arrested, then put through the process, the judicial process, where guilt will be established or not. And at the end of the process, you can then put a label on this person. Sometimes it's difficult to, stick to that because your humanity is raging there. How dare this person harm and kill this child in such a heinous way? So it's a very, very strong thing. Anger is a very powerful emotion. So we need to keep a check on it as much as possible. The other principle that governs our profession is humanity. Journalists should do no harm, okay? Journalists should do no harm. What we publish or what we broadcast can be hurtful and harmful. We need to be aware of the impact, the weight our words and our images, in the case of video, the weight they carry and they have on the lives of other people. There's this concept of, if I found this thing out, I need to run and publish it, or I need to tell everyone. You need to think about humanity. Take, for example, Nigerians, we have a very strong ethno-religious streak in us. I'm not going to try to quantify it, but it's there. We have a strong ethno-religious streak. So if, for example, a journalist comes across a scene where two people engage in a fight and one ends up dead, there's a tendency for us to attach ethnic labels. And that's a problem for me. I teach my staff here. I teach them to set aside these labels. The labels do not define the crime. Let the crime define the person and not their label. They are not a representative of their ethnic group. Their ethnic group did not come together and vote and say, you come. We're going to give you representation. Go forth and represent us. Everything you do reflects on who we are and what we do. That's not how it happens. So why do we insist on attaching labels? Again, back to the scene of two people fighting, one dying. It's not uncommon for you to hear a Hausa man fought a Ishekiri man and stabbed the Ishekiri man and he died. Why can't we just say two people had a fight and one of them ended up dead? These are the facts of the case. What does the person's ethnicity have to do with the crime? Does the ethnicity determine the gravity of the death? Is there a subtle death versus a heavy death based on your ethnicity? No. Death is death. Murder is murder. So we need to consider our humanity when reporting such a thing, because if you report it and you do so through an ethnic lens, somebody somewhere might be going through the content you have put together. Maybe they got issues with their neighbor of the same ethnic group. You could trigger them, and that will make you liable. So we need to be, humane in how we report things as journalists. What we publish can harm people. It can lead to a loss of life. What we report can start a stampede. The word cockroach started the Rwandan genocide. One ethnic group, somebody just decided all of a sudden, I'm going to call the other ethnic group, oh, those cockroaches. That's how it started. Before you know it, genocide, people dead. So we need to be mindful about humanity. The other principle that governs our profession is accountability. Now, a sure sign of professionalism and responsible journalism is our ability to hold ourselves accountable. When we commit errors, and we do, we must correct them, and our expressions of regret must be sincere and not cynical. I've seen many publications, many media make a mistake, and in the course of correcting the mistake, they do so casually. But when the mistake was committed, it was committed passionately. It was committed emphatically. But when the time came to, make amends, it was done casually. So our profession says you cannot do that. You must give it the same amount of attention. If you passionately went after someone in error, you need to passionately pursue them with an apology. So if you do mess up, it's not a case of saying, well, yesterday we said there was 69 billion that was stolen. It's actually not 69 billion. It's 600 naira that was missing and not even stolen. So let's just correct that. And then you move on. You can't do that. You can't do that in the profession. You need to say, yesterday we said 69 billion was stolen. This was an error on our part. The correct information is 600 naira was missing, not stolen. And we do apologize for any harm we may have caused to the whatever party. That is a sincere apology. So accountability is very important for us. Very, very important for us. Cynicism has no place when it comes to our profession and accountability. If you have an ego, this is not the profession for you. Keep your ego aside, because journalism is service to the greater good, not service to self. That's how it works. We need to listen to the concerns of our audience. Okay. So that's quickly about my profession and the principles that govern my profession. So I'll come now to the second part. And that's the effects of the fourth estate on governance. Lots of people here from different political parties. I think you all need to be aware that I have a principle, and that is, in life, everything we do has a cost. And everything we don't do also has a cost. So it's up to us to weigh the costs of our actions and inactions, because life will present you with the bill. You just need to be able to pay that bill when it does so, instead of putting our hands on our heads and saying, oh, woe is me, village people, this, that, the other. What we do have consequences. We need to be aware of that. So the effects of the fourth estate on governance. Nigeria is a very good example of, just how powerful, how influential the fourth estate is in the lives of the people. In many cities, many towns, many nooks and crannies, you'll come across groups of people gathered around many newspaper stands. If you hang around them, you'll hear them engaged in very heated debates, which derive basically from their sometimes diverse interpretations of what they read on the pages of the dailies or the newspapers. They sit down there all day, just going through headlines, having arguments and this, that. They're analysts in their own rights, okay? The thing is, this is the only source of information on governance for many people in the land. Not everyone has access to go and get their data and read the press, on their Android phone and this, that, the other. Lots of people still rely on printed work or work from the broadcast industry, TV or radio. So it goes without saying that the responsibility, because that's what it is, the responsibility on the shoulders of journalism, not just in Nigeria, but around the world, that responsibility is massive. The rule of thumb is this: if we write it, they will read it. If we say it, they will believe it. That's the rule of thumb. These two phrases serve to remind us that we in the news media have the power to shape public opinion and agenda. So, talking about the power to shape agenda and so on and so forth, it brings me to the next part, which is determining public focus and agenda setting. It's an interactive part. So, Chalia, I will rely on you to introduce and call up people to respond to the questions I'll put to them now. So let's just jump right in. I will dwell here for quite a bit, because I think it's very significant to the reason we are here. Let's try to practicalize and have a discussion basically about what we are talking about. I can't be the only one yammering on in this class, okay? There are lots of you that I'd like to hear from you as well. So first question is, what is the current focus of political conversation right now in Nigeria? If you want to answer, please indicate by putting up your virtual hand, and Chalia will admit you to respond to the question. And please, let's keep it as brief as possible so that we can accommodate as many responses as possible. So the question again, what is the current focus of political conversation in Nigeria? What are we discussing predominantly from a political perspective?
Okay, I've asked you to unmute, Lori.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening. Is that Lori Mikhail?
Yes, sir. Political conversation in Nigeria currently, I think, is against the poor subsidy, backing and forth concerning the price of crude oil and especially PMT that is ravaging, it's causing the poverty around the state.
Okay, thank you, Mikhail. Next person.
Glorious, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, for me, the discussion in politics now is surrounded, it is surrounding the situation of Wando PLC. Then, as you could say, in the future of Nigeria is mortgaged by Tinubu and his family. And then spokespersons of Tinubu also giving rebuttals and saying Atiku is the architect of Nigeria's crippling economy, and the back and forth about who is to blame about the bad economic situation in the country.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Owando PLC. All right, go ahead. Next person.
Obi, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you, ma.
Obi, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. The political conversation that is predominant in my area is surrounded by the economic hardship of Nigeria presently, and majorly on the directionless policy of the president. The current administration is very hard.
Okay, this direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what is happening in my area.
Okay, Obi, thank you. Next person. We'll take 5 more. Or let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, Zeben. We'll take 7 more and then move to the next question. Next person, please.
Okay. Ofane, may I ask you?
Okay, the current discussion now is the fact that despite the fact that everybody is suffering in the country, our president has bought a new.
Sorry, are you saying everybody? Are you sure everybody's suffering? Some people are living
That's
up.
And that despite our president has bought a new plane. Our president has taken NPC and Owando everything to himself. Our president's son and Shagori's son are the ones handling the Lagos-Calabar road and literally sharing everything amongst themselves.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Ofonime. Next one.
So, Sinabos is on mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Tosin, loud and clear.
All right, so I would say reduction of cost of governance, fuel subsidy, and the recent appointment of the
Chief Justice.
Chief Justice, yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you, Tosin.
Samson, you can go ahead.
Samsudin.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the good work with radio now. And I think in my own close environment, the discussion is the latest one concerning the controversy about the appointment of the new Chief Justice, Justice Kekereekun, and coming from antecedent and whatsoever over the years. And so surprising, nobody raised the alarm while she was appointed as the acting. Not until now she is appointed as the main Chief Justice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shamsuddin. Couple more, and we need to move it along. You will get your chance to answer other questions. Next person, please.
Okay, Michael, I've asked you to unmute.
Michael? I don't think Michael's heard us.
Hello.
All right, go on, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, sir. One of the political conversation that is going on, let me say, even in Nigeria generally, is the Dangote refinery and how they probably consider to be supplying him crude oil, to supplying the refinery crude oil, so that I think they said they want to, is it proof or is it test run now? Something like that, so that they can start giving the refinery crude oil. I think that's one of the things, and the appointment of the new Chief Justice. Thank you, sir.
All right, let's take one more and then move it along. Yes?
Ibrahim, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Ibrahim.
Yes, sir. Sir, in my own understanding, the current discussion on Nigerian politics are heavily focused on the economics and the social crisis the country is currently facing, which led to widespread protests and growing public discontent. While the primary issues driving this question include the removal of the petrol subsidies, skyrocketing inflation, and the worsening cost of living. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you all. So the reason I asked this question is we all reside in different parts of the country. We all go to different media for our information and so on and so forth. Now, 8 of you responded to that question, and 2, that's 25%, 1/4 of you, 2 people referred to the economy, the hardship, and the protests. And that should tell you something. This country spent 10 working days watching a protest on hardship across the land. But from your responses, clearly the focus has shifted from that to all these other areas. I'm not saying these other areas are not important, but we spent a long time looking at the protests. Media houses reporting, people on the scene, the woman with the empty pot. It was the rave of the moment. But now we've shifted our focus to other things. I'm trying to show you the power of the press here. That tells you something. Let's not forget, before our protests, the nationwide protests in the country, the Kenyans took to the streets. The whole world watched Kenya take to the streets over tax reforms by their president. They stayed at it, and this thing is still going on to some extent in some areas. The president reversed some of those tax policies and is now being compelled to look at other areas. Now, at this stage, it's not a matter of, this is democracy. It's not a matter of who is right and who is wrong. I'm looking at this from the perspective of the power the people have and the responsibility of the press to advance national conversation. These areas are important. Fuel subsidy. Speaking about fuel subsidy, during the protests, I want to ask this next question. Please, people who didn't get a chance to respond for the first question, let's hear from them for this other question related to the protest and fuel subsidy. The general belief is that President Tinubu delivered a nationwide speech and address. And in some quarters, it is said that the president did not address the concerns of the protesters. My question now is that a true representation of the fact that the president did not address the concerns of the protesters? Media houses took this headlines. People said that. Is that a true representation of the facts? I'm making reference to the president's address. So again, put your hand up, and if not spoken before, and Chalia will give you the floor.
Okay, I don't know if Glorious is for this question or the last one. Let me ask it on mute.
The responses for this current question regarding, again, your thoughts on the president's address. The perception is that the president did not address the concerns of the protesters.
Okay, Ibrahim, you can go ahead.
Okay, good evening.
Ibrahim, we've heard from you, haven't we?
Good evening. Ibrahim Rafinali from Kaduna.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So the president, when he was trying to address the nation, did not even look at what the current situation of the people are. He just went ahead to tell us that what he have done for the government at the present time that we are now. So he took his decision that no more subsidy, and subsidy is gone forever. So whatever Nigerians will face is none of his business. That is what I think about removal of. Yes, so he don't care. He don't, and his cabinet, I don't know. Are they not going into the public, hearing what people, or seeing how people are suffering, how people are dying? Some might not even
Ibrahim?
eat. Yes.
Yeah, all right, let's leave it there. I don't want us to overanalyze. I just want to get your thoughts, your response to the question. Okay, the next person, please. Did President Tinubu address the concerns of the protesters? Ibrahim says he did not, and went a step further to say he doesn't care. Next person.
Naladi, you can go ahead.
All right, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Naladi, go ahead.
I think that the president did, except that I think the protesters too had the expectation. I think for most of the people I interacted with, they were expecting to hear a reversal of the fuel subsidy, but the tag of the protest was end bad governance. And in the president's speech, he was trying to outline some of the things they have done along the line of the economic reforms that is causing the hardship and making people go to issue. So I think fundamentally the president addressed the major issue. It's just that it wasn't as the protesters were expecting.
Interesting, Naladi. All right, next person, please.
Okay, Ama Ewong, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Ama.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think the president did not address the interest or the reason for the protest. Yeah, and this is because I think when the protesters came out, they forwarded a list of items they wanted the president to address. And the list of those items was forwarded to the president. But when the president came out to address the nation, he did not mention whether or not these items that were sent to him as the demand of the people, if he has been able to address any of those issues. So in my own opinion, I don't think that the president addressed the reason for why these people came out to protest. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Am I wrong? Let's take a couple more.
Titila, you have asked to unmute.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Titilayo.
Yes, I'm so happy to be part of this program today to learn from you, sir. Concerning the question that you asked, to my own opinion, I believe that the president actually addressed the issue. But what happened is that unlike the time of the end SARS protest, this time around, there's a lot of demands, no uniform demands. There are a lot of organizers, unlike the previous protest, that's the end SARS protest. So this is where media framing and agenda setting comes in. What I mean by media framing is that people are not even expecting anything good from the president's speech this time around. People have already made up their minds that whatever the president is going to say, that they won't, that means that they already have a agenda setting, as already said it as media framing. So that's my own opinion, that president actually addressed that issue, sir.
Thank you so much, Titilayo. Right, we'll take just two more and then we move it along again. Still more questions to come.
Ibrahim, I've asked you to unmute.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Go ahead.
My name is Ibrahim Garba from Kano. So actually, what I want to say here is that the president did not in any way address the issue of the protestants. My reasons are, some of the reasons for the protest are insecurity and current hardship that people are facing. But the president, when delivering his speech, he went ahead talking about empowerment and all other programs that they were initiating to bring. And Nigeria, we don't need such, we are not saying that such programs are not good, but what we want now, like the oil subsidy should be brought back, and this insecurity, especially that we are facing in the north, should be addressed, and the current hardship. But the president did not in any way talk about that. He went ahead saying what we would not expected to hear from him. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ibrahim Garba. One more, please.
Isaac, you can go ahead.
All right. A very beautiful evening to you, sir.
And you as well, Isaac. Go ahead.
It's really an honor to sit under your facilitation tonight. Thank you for that wonderful session. I want to first of all note that the essence of democracy is defeated, sir. When in relation to the manner in which the concerns of the protesters were handled, I want to really say that the essence is, for me, it is defeated. I'm saying that because the style or the methodology employed for for the president to address the issues of the protesters, which is a concern of the general public or the masses in Nigeria, shows that the president, for instance, does not even get to he doesn't know what is happening in the nation. He's not involved in what is happening in the nation. Now, I say this because he came out, the style that was used to, in quotes, respond to the quest or the plight of the people was, trying to read the speech. This speech was only written by a set of individuals, maybe those who are in the grassroots or who walk around the president, who are concerned about media issues. Even the composition of the speech as used by the president to address the issue is too vague. Like it's not real. It's
okay,
not
Isaac.
real. And my question towards that is, my question for that is, why can't the president adopt like a live chat with Nigerians? Why can't the president adopt a live chat, I would say, with the press, and then maybe members of the public within that? That is the demonstration, or that's the proof that we are really practicing democracy. So I want to say that from the strategy of using the speech to address concern of masses, first, that's the failure. And on a very serious note, concerns about this or about the issues as presented to the president during the course of the protest or the protest objective, the questions were not answered in any way. They were not answered.
Okay, Isaac, I will take that to be your closing remarks and your definite response.
Okay.
You're saying it was not answered.
Thank you.
Questions raised were not answered.
That's
okay.
Right. That's
all right.
Right. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Isaac. All right. So, again, different people, different perceptions about the president's address, and I call them just that, perceptions. I have responses ranging from the president did not in any way address the concerns, a response ranging from that to a response that says he addressed the concerns of the protesters, just not what they wanted or expected to hear. So it's a matter of perception, isn't it? But there is a fact. The fact is the president either addressed or did not address. We had this conversation, one of our editorials. I use it as part of orientation for some of our newbies as well. Fuel subsidy was one of the issues raised by protesters, calling for a return of subsidized fuel. I believe in all his response, President Tinubu spoke directly to only the fuel situation. He responded to that. Many people will argue and say, well, that is one out of many things. Some other people would argue and say, well, fuel subsidy was the genesis of our economic woes. And shortly after that, we had the attempted unification of our exchange rate, and all of this coming within 6 months of a failed Naira swap exercise that costs the economy upwards of 20 trillion, if you ask some economists. So He spoke specifically to a fuel. The other areas, not so much. So can we say he did not address? I can't say that. In all fairness to him, he addressed one aspect of the protesters' demands, and his addressing it wasn't, I will agree, again, with Nlaji, that it wasn't what people wanted to hear. We wanted to hear him saying, okay, I'm bringing back subsidy. But you can surmise from his submission, his address, that it's not going to happen because this is the reason why it was taken. And any of you who are economically minded, if you've got a background in economics, you'll understand that the window of fuel subsidy as we knew it is closed. It has been overtaken by our devaluation of the currency because we're still bringing this stuff from outside the country, which means you're relying on Forex. So we've devalued. Assuming the currency was as strong as it was before the removal of fuel subsidy, maybe that window might still be open. But right now, we're clearly buying fuel at a price that is not reflective of the international cost, which means somebody's paying a difference. I'll leave you politicians to determine what the difference is called. Is it subsidy, under recovery, this, that, the other? I can't be bothered. All I know is a cost is being put into this imported product so that I can buy it at a very high price in my country. Those are the facts. So again, it's about agenda setting. Titilayo, yes, you're absolutely right. Yes. Media frame and agenda setting. This is how it works. So again, back to the initial submissions given by some of you, mentioning these other very, very important areas of our lives, of Nigeria, of the economy. They are very important. But we saw it fit to take to the streets for 10 working days. And we are so comfortable setting it aside and moving to other things. Again, I remind us all of strategy. This is where media comes in. Now, my organization, Radio Now, we have a sister organization, Daria Media, same CEO and managing director, Kadria Ahmed. On the 17th and 18th of July, that's just about a month ago, over a month ago, we put together a series of conversations to address the economy, security, and governance. And we sent out invitations to the necessary cabinet members, 12 cabinet members, that's ministers, and then security chiefs as well, to come sit down, engage the people in dialogue. Let us, Isaac, please mute yourself. To engage the people in dialogue. Isaac, microphone needs to be muted, please. Thank you, Charlie. So the idea was to get them to sit down to have a look at 1 year into their administration. Where were we when they came into office? What has been done and where are we now? A simple conversation. And because the Minister of Information, for example, is my former chairman, so I still refer to him as the chairman. We had them spearhead the whole thing. The thing is, we presented that as an opportunity for the administration to meet the Nigerian people before we take to the streets, before the Nigerian people take to the streets. Come out, meet the people, and have a conversation about these areas where people have serious concerns. They promised to show up night before the whole thing. It didn't happen. It's called The First Year. You can go to YouTube and Google The First Year. You'll see it was a series of talks, happened over 2 days. Right, so agenda setting, the media has a role to play in keeping the focus on these issues, or else we'll be chasing our tails forever and ever, and it'll be difficult to achieve what we ought to achieve. So again, because of time, we're going to take three answers per question now. My next question now is, what is Nigeria's most urgent problem? We have many problems. What's our most urgent problem? Urgency indicating if you don't treat it right now, we're done for, because there are many problems. What is Nigeria's most urgent problems? Indicate with a hand, please, and the Chadia will give you the floor. Sorry, we can only take 3, then we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, Hilary, you can unmute and answer.
Good evening. Good evening. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. The urgent Nigerian situation I thought we should tend to is insecurity, whereby I think if we have a secured environment for us to rebuild our agricultural environment, and at least food security will be for citizens, then it will minimize our mode of hunger. Thank you.
Okay. Food security and food security as a sub-part security. All right, thank you very much. Ilori, next person.
Okay, Balogun, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, good evening, man. Good evening, sir. Good evening to everyone. One
Good
of
evening. What is
the
your Balogun?
one of the current issues is about our naira devaluation.
Okay. Naira devaluation is our most urgent problem. Okay. All right. Thank you, Balogun. Next person, last one for this question. We'll move on to the next.
Okay, Adorable Francis, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Adorable. Go ahead.
Okay, I think the current
Not
situation
current. Not current. Most urgent problem.
Okay, the most urgent,
the most urgent problem. That if you don't do it now, that's it.
The most urgent problem of Nigeria now is to reduce the fuel price, because as at now, here in Lagos is going for 900 and something naira. So attention must be drawn to that. If the fuel price is being reduced, I believe that the issue will come down.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much, Adorable. All right. Again, next round of questions before we have a look at the responses. So what I have here is security and food security, then naira devaluation, and then the price of fuel. So next question, how do we fix these problems? How do we fix them? Pick one of the problems that have been mentioned and then quickly suggest how you expect it to be sorted. How do we fix the problem? Okay. I see hands.
Okay, Izini, I've asked you to unmute.
Hello. For
Hello.
e-security. Hello.
Yes,
can you
go
hear
ahead.
me? Please confirm. Okay. Okay. For e-security, I believe one of the biggest ways we can solve the matter of insecurity is we have to have accountability. Our military spending, there's no accountability for it. And two, we have to have a database of people. It's interesting that you can say somebody entered or kidnappers entered here, kidnapped somebody, and we don't have concrete database. So even when you have a picture of the person, we cannot even trace who this person is. I think we need to have a comprehensive database of citizens of Nigeria, everybody in Nigeria. So that's to an extent that you can't even buy food in a setting, or you can't do any kind of transaction if you're not registered as a citizen of Nigeria or somebody, a foreigner or an alien living in Nigeria. You must have some sort of registration or way of recognition as a person in Nigeria. I think that is the best way to start.
All right, thank you, Eziani.
Okay, David, I've asked you to unmute.
All right, thank you very much. I'll speak to insecurity, although my response in a way connects to everything else. And for me, it's the political will or the lack of it. I believe that issues of insecurity can be tackled by our governments. We have all the technology to track down journalists and everybody else we are interested in, except for terrorists and gunmen and everybody else who is causing chaos. And I feel it has a lot to do with political reasons. So if the government comes up with that political will, insecurity will be tackled in weeks. That's on the one hand. And then secondly, I feel like there's a heightened level of distrust in our government by the citizens. And regardless of what they do, be it in the economy or anything else, even if they are the right policies, like what you said earlier, sir, about your emotion, how you feel towards those things, it still gets in the way. So I think the government will need to do a lot of work in earning their way, earning people's trust back. And that'll have a lot to do with developing the political will to address these very glaring issues that everyday citizens can address. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. Last person.
Tijani, I've asked you to unmute.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Tijani. Go ahead.
I'm actually I want to talk about the security for the motor. When we look at the security architecture here we're facing right now, there are some modalities that government need to change to see that we have achieved this security problem in the country. We can use such the AIC and the Eagles and everything in order to improve the security problem we're facing using the technologies. So I believe by using that, our security problem is going to be enhanced. We're not going to have that challenge anymore.
Okay, thank you so much, Tijani. All right, can I just ask one last question, and let's just take 3 responses from someone or people who have not spoken. You've all proffered solutions to these problems, okay? And there's a general rule of thumb. People who are not clever, people who don't have significant intelligence do not make it to the highest levels of society on any guise whatsoever, unless, of course, it's a monarchy that's hereditary. In which case, if you're a king, you give birth to a half-wit. The half-wit ends up wearing the crown, and that's that. But that's monarchy. But in a situation where there's a competition to climb up whatever ladder it is, the social ladder, the professional ladder, the political ladder, where there's a competition, people who have made it to certain levels, that's the topmost levels, they are generally considered to be smart. They know what time it is. That's the general saying. So you've all proffered these solutions. The question is, why isn't it happening? That's my next question. Because I'm going to assume they know that, yes, they are not applying political will. I'm going to assume they know they're not deploying technology. I'm going to assume they know that the security architecture needs tweaking and whatnot. So the question is, why isn't it happening, do you think? 3 last responses, please.
Okay, Tosin, I've asked you to unmute.
Tosin, go ahead.
Okay. Adorable, you can go ahead.
Adorable gets a second shot. Go ahead, Adorable.
Okay, I didn't actually raise my hand anyway.
Oh,
I think
it's
the
been
previous
up there. Okay. Do you want to take a stab at the question?
I didn't get the question well.
Okay, the question is, we have proffered solutions to security, one of our most urgent problems in the country. The question now is, you need to assume that these people know what's up, what's going on, and how to get things done. That is why they have attained the levels they have in life. They have managed to claw their way to the uppermost echelons of governance in our country. We are 200 million strong. We are a nation of very intelligent people. So I think you need to give them credit for being able to think effectively to address these problems and challenges to which we have provided solutions. So the question is, why aren't they applying these solutions to the challenges? Why isn't it happening? Why aren't we seeing an improvement in insecurity? Why? What's going on? Why are they not using the political will, which we say will resolve our security? Why aren't things happening?
I think, to me,
clearly they don't want
that
to.
is the question I've been asking myself every day.
Okay, that's a good one.
Why is it that the president and the rest of others, they are not taking decisions that will affect Nigeria? And I think I just believe that they are happy seeing Nigerians suffering. So that is my own.
All right, Adorable. Next person, please. Interesting one there.
Obi, I've asked you to unmute.
All right, thank you, Charlie. But though this is not exactly why I raised my hand, the issue is long gone. But then, if I will have to speak on this, I'm going to toe the line of the idea behind these weaponization. I think for me, the political leaders and elite has decided to use this to weaponize the poor masses, because in as much as we imagine living in a very free and fair society and a just society where everything is like the other Sena climes where we seem to be copying from. the society will be very amazing, and the political participation and socialization of the people will actually be elevated. And then it will boil down to holding them accountable for every services or governance they are rendering. So the idea behind the reluctant attitude towards getting rid of this insecurity we are suffering up and down is because it actually it is a distraction to what they are diverting our money and everything. So I have a lot of accusation I could lay on these different reasons for these issues. So for me, that's what I think it is all about.
All right, thank you, Obi. One last one. Why do these problems persist?
Okay, good evening, sir. Thank you very much for the teaching. So I believe one of the reasons why they actually, or why it's kind of, let's say, difficult to apply some stringent measures to the problems of Nigeria is I say the kind of politics we practice. Recently I was just thinking about the way things are, then I come to realize that sometimes to get some things done, even if it is the right thing, the process may be kind of difficult and I say literally like kind of impossible. Because to get some things done, either good or bad, you need to owe some persons some favor. And then in the business of owing people favor and every other thing, you can't actually go against them when they are doing something bad because you are owing them something. So I believe the politics we practice, literally our politics is just kind of making things difficult to really progress. So that's just my own. So it's not as if they don't know, but then to do things, sometimes you have to do some things that we require that you step on the foot of some persons. But if you are owing them or you are expecting something, a favor from them, you really can't do that. So I believe that one of the reasons and of the problem of Nigeria is the kind of politics we practice. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Lulakin. I think in a nutshell, I'll summarize. I'll summarize what you said like this: he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Because if you go out there, you try to change something and you are beholden to somebody else who is perpetrating this illegality or this criminal act, it's going to be a bit difficult. So he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. So that raises the question of the cleanliness of their hands. How clean are they, these players, policymakers at the highest, most levels of governance? Some of you will find yourselves there tomorrow. Some of you are on your journey right now. I think it should serve as a reminder that you need to be very, very conscious of the path you take as you rise. You need to be very conscious of the commitments you make, the associations you make, who you will be beholden to. It's a very conscious thing because at the end of the day, you might end up like some of them. I've had very personal conversations, which I cannot bring here to this forum with some of these people. And I've seen good people with good intentions go into a system and end up being powerless to basically have Nigerians benefit from their goodness. Their hands are literally tied simply because things are not as they seem. Intention is one thing. The ability, the capacity to perform, to deliver is going to be another thing. You need to watch it. All right. So, the media's role in a situation like this, because again, we just looked at a cross-section of different issues. The media's role in things like this is for us to keep the conversation focused on the real issues and not so much on the dance and entertainment aspect of it. Yes, our role is to educate, entertain, inform. We also need to set agenda. We need to pick that up, that mantle a bit more seriously, which brings me to the next part, which is our commitment to the truth. Again, we're talking about the effects of the fourth estate of the realm on governance. So when I started out in this industry, my boss then had a chat with me about brown envelopes. Those of you who are familiar with the profession know that brown envelopes are what they are. They're bribery, basically. They are certain amounts of money given to journalists in the hopes of, we call it different things, transportation, this, that, the other, but the giving of that money is intended to affect and influence whatever you publish. Let's stop kidding ourselves. So again, I had that conversation with my boss and he asked me the question. He said, Cameron, would you take a brown envelope if no one was watching? Instantly, I told him, no way. Now, this is my boss. And he had this funny smile on his face. And he said, yeah, I answered a bit too quick. And I said, look, it's a no-brainer for me. Because again, as I remind you, this wasn't my core discipline. I set out on a different path and I stumbled upon journalism, media first, and then journalism. So I started out in the profession later than I should have. Wish I'd learned this when I was 18, truth be told. So I said, look, I'm smart enough now to understand that a brown envelope for someone like me is a stumbling block. I want a brown container. And he didn't get it. He said, oh, you mean you want more money? I said, no. I'm smart enough to understand that if you create value, if you become the best at what you do, you create that value. Money is a secondary issue. Money chases value. This is how it works anywhere in the world. So if you make something of yourself, if you go out there, be the best you can, people will patronize you. They will patronize your skill, your expertise, and that's how it works. That's how it works. So my ethos then, and it still is, my ethos is to feed my passion by being the best at what I do without a compromise in the ethics I've mentioned and more. But the thing is, it's a big country. I can preach all I want. At the end of the day, I'm just one individual that will be able to do what he can do. I just want to make my mark. I'll be honest with you. Another conversation I had with my boss, he said, what do you want at the end of the day, when you come to the end of the road in this profession? What do you want to look back and say, yes, this is what I wanted to get out of it, and this is what I've gotten out of it? What is that one thing? And I told him, I said, immortality. I think for a long time, man has chased immortality. And I understand that if you do things that are greater than you, if you focus on other people and do great deeds and great things, your memory will live on in the acts you have done, the deeds you have done. People will know about it, thereby giving you immortality. Biologically, my body's going to give out. You know, one day that'll be that. I'll bow out, I'm gone, I'm done. But my acts, my deeds can live on after me. So that's what do I want out of it? Immortality. That's it. It feeds my soul. I sleep well at night when I focus on not my problem, but other people's problems. It's a soothing balm for someone like me, but that's a personal thing. I can do that because I consider myself, you know, fortunate enough to have had what I now consider to be a beginning that was firmly rooted in ethics and principles. This is what has given me that foundation to be able to weather any storm and temptation. Do I get tempted? Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been in situations where with my tummy rumbling, I've turned down certain efforts of trying to entice me or to change my mind for this, that, the other, because it's not me. It really isn't me. It's a very simple decision once you know you want to make it. If you're not sure whether you'll be a taker or not, then it'll be a problem for you. Temptation will dog you all your life. So just make the decision. Yes, I will take it and be like the rest, or no, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to compromise. Integrity is more important to me. It's a simple thing. Temptation, yeah, it will come. You can't control that. It's life. Okay? So again, with that question, the principles of the members of my industry, the fourth estate of the realm, affect our role of holding government to account on our behalf. Now, some of you, again, are going to go on to play very significant roles in the world of politics. So while I have you here, I can only impart whatever little knowledge I have about my industry, which is a small part of an entire country, okay? Some of you are going to look to manipulate people like me. You will look to manipulate information through people like me in your favor. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone, but again, I can only appeal that you have a second thought. Don't forget, everything you do has a cost. Everything you don't do also has a cost. Make sure you are upfront with these costs with yourself, because you'll have yourself to live with after the act or after failure to act. It's going to be you. Other important areas, misinformation and disinformation. There are many credible media houses out there who are doing a very good job of holding the government to account, but even the best of them sometimes can manipulate information. I've just talked about the radio station and the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Benjamin Kalu. So even the best of them can manipulate information. Many people do regard misinformation as lying in general, but that's not entirely correct. Misinformation is the accidental sharing of inaccurate or false information. It's been shared accidentally. But disinformation with a D, disinformation, is the deliberate sharing of inaccurate or false information. So While misinformation can be damaging, it is not intentional because the person didn't know. They just innocently shared something, but it's bad. You just shared it. So it wasn't intentional, but it happens and it can be damaging. But disinformation is a deliberate and calculated attempt to mislead people. It's definitely damaging. The person who does it knows exactly what they're doing. So that's the difference between both. They're both damaging. One is with intent, one is out of ignorance, but they're both damaging, okay? Now, in my industry, we are compelled to report the facts as they are, not as we want them to be. And I like to tell the story of a popular media house, which once joined other media houses for a press briefing that was given by our security agencies after violence had claimed some lives in one state in this country. So basically, the Air Force, the Navy, Army, the police, other agencies, NSCDC, they were all in attendance. And because it's a press briefing, they handed out hard copies of the statements that their representatives made. Now, this particular media house reported that all security agencies gave statements except the police force, which the media house said could not be reached for comments. That's how they couched it. Now, the media house enjoys significant followership nationally and internationally, and it's very, very probable. All right, it's very probable that through that report, they have left some of their followership. They've given them the impression that the Nigerian police force didn't give that particular matter in question the seriousness it's warranted, because they counted all these other agencies, but they omitted the police. Now, this narrative that they put out, it could further widen the chasm of trust that exists. One of you mentioned trust. It could further widen that chasm of trust that exists between the people and the police force. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for us at all. I expected the media house to use its influence to not only demand professional conduct from those people that we train and entrust with the constitutional powers of law enforcement, but to also do what it can to bridge the divides between people and law enforcement. The closer our relationship with law enforcement, the better security we will enjoy, because security is driven, especially policing, it's founded on information. And the bulk of that information comes from us, the people. Security agencies, they're not magicians and police. Intelligence will only get you so much. You need sometimes information, specific information to fill in key gaps. That comes from the people. So the relationship, it's key. Civil-military relations, that's what the armed forces calls it. It's a very important part. And the reason insecurity thrives, again, for a number of reasons, is because that relationship is not good. So when we paint the police with a bad brush, we are literally putting ourselves at risk. That's what it is. We should constructively criticize them and challenge them to do more. But when you use one brush to paint them, it's not a good idea at the end of the day. So without question, looking at the media house, I wasn't happy. I was sad, really, at the reports they put out, because all other media houses that were present at that briefing carried a full report. Again, a full report, which included the statement of the Nigeria Police Force. So I wanted to find out, but why would these people do that? Because I know the media house would interact and so on. And the thing is, about 1 week to the day of that press briefing, an editor and a senior correspondent of that media house were arrested and detained by the Nigeria Police Force. Now, it wasn't the first time it had happened. The media house is known for its investigative qualities and resources. So what that means basically is every now and then they're going to be, turning up on the black pages of certain government officials because they dig. So by excluding the statement of the Nigeria Police Force from the general report, that was their way, or may have been their way, because I'm not in their heads. I don't know their actual intent. I'm only trying to connect the dots as I see them. That might have been their way of responding to those arrests. It was not ethical. They clearly published incomplete information to their followers. So is this the same thing as lying? No, you can't say they lied, but it's certainly manipulating information. That's what it was, manipulating information. And it's basically become more challenging to discern between what's accurate and what is inaccurate, to be a double-edged sword for the media in the hands of scoundrels, unscrupulous degenerates, as I call them. AI is a formidable disinformation tool. They will use it to paint a very false picture that uninformed people will literally swallow. At this stage we are at now, globally, not just Nigeria, disinformation is at its highest level, and it's very difficult to counter as far as the everyday Nigerian is concerned. The everyday Nigerian doesn't have the skills sometimes to discern the highest levels of deception and disinformation. Decades ago, not too long ago, the world held the view that pictures say 1,000 words. These days, you really have to ask yourself whether to believe what your eyes see or not. Now, for the purpose of time, Chalia, I'm going to leave the part about information management and the right of the people to know. I'll quickly summarize it in a couple of sentences. If you're handing out readable material, they can follow up there. But suffice it to say that the right of the people to know is one aspect of my profession that I think I need to clarify. It's very tricky. Nothing is really black and white when it comes to what's in the greater public goods. Sometimes in the course of doing good, you end up harming people. So you must be very, very careful in what you do if you are an information manager, if you are a member of the fourth estate of the realm. So the question is, do people have the right to know? The clear answer is yes. Or is it? Is it really that easy to say yes? I will go to an experience I had, okay? And I'll get your questions, the last round of questions. I had a situation where I went to the northeastern part of the country to deliver some relief materials to the IGPs that were collated by followers and listeners of my radio station. I was in Abuja then, and they sent us a lot of stuff. It was so much, and we were very grateful. The United Nations Humanitarian Air Service assisted us in airlifting all this stuff to the northeastern part of the country. Now, this was in 2015. December it was, the last week before Christmas in 2015. This was the height of terrorism. I think they had blown up This Day newspapers in Abuja. They were struck a couple of bomb attacks on the nation's capital. So fear was palpable in the land. Many people afraid and concerned, saying, terrorism is winning. Before we know it, they will overrun the country. That's how bad it was. So we went to the northeastern part of the country, me and this organization, shared the relief materials, but I had a second task. My second task was to go to the front lines, to meet the soldiers, and by way of a Christmas gift, if you will, to them. My intention was to bring back messages from the soldiers in the front lines to their families, you know, greetings and so on and so forth, just something for the troops to give them, boost their morale and so on and so forth. The first concentration camp, beg your pardon, I say concentration, the first IGP camp we went to, Dalori, was the largest then. This was in Maiduguri. About 50,000 people there. It took us 3 days to distribute what we brought in that camp. 3 days, from 6 a.m. to the sun went down, after 7 sometimes. So first thing I noticed when we turned up there were the soldiers. They were eating Indomie. And I come from a military family, 3rd generation military. That's my ancestry. And I know that soldiers are not given to things like Indomie, especially when you're on duty, sentry duty in a warlike situation. They rely on heavy carbohydrates, carbs, because they need their energy. They need energy when they eat. And after further investigation, I found out that they weren't being fed as they should have. I did some digging. The mess truck only showed up once every couple of days, and it was a problem. So I sought out the garrison commander. Garrison commander is like the administrative officer of a military unit. Sought out the garrison commander, and I had a chat with him, and I said, look, this is what I've discovered. Fortunately for me, he was a colonel. Fortunately for me, he was newly posted there, which is a good thing because it means he's not been ingrained into this is how we do things here. That Nigerian symptom, which is absolutely disgusting. So I met him and I had a chat with him and I said, look, this has come to my attention. Clearly this will not stand. I'm a journalist. I ought to go and publish now because I did my digging. And there are any number of ways you can interpret this. First of all, the Nigerian army spent 500 naira a day feeding each soldier. So that's 15,000 a month for each soldier. Apart from their salaries, apart from other hazard, this, that, the other, this is the feeding rounds for the whatnots. So if you do your mathematics, it amounts to quite a lot of money because I didn't have the exact figure of how many people are being fed, how many troops are being catered to in this warlike situation. I didn't have those numbers. Some people have said that insecurity is another means of draining some money from the system. I'll leave you to draw your conclusions. My job is to report the facts that I found as they are. So I had a chat with the garrison commander and I said, look, here's what we'll do. I'm not going to publish. I will check back in 3 months' time. Sir, please correct this. There are organizations I interface interface with here. I will touch base with them. Let's have this thing corrected. We can't have this going on. These people that we put out in the field to protect us, we need to give them everything they need, the tools they need, the encouragement they need, and we also need to sustain their physical bodies with good nutrition. They are all that stand between us and darkness or terrorism. They are our shield. Right now, there's a crack in that shield. We need to get it fixed. Now, fortunately for me, I did check back, and fortunately for me, I say the situation was corrected to a certain degree. I don't know if it's possible to eradicate corruption entirely. I understand that we must strive for a total eradication of corruption, but they had done some significant progress in that regard, so I didn't go to publish. So the question is, what would you have done as a journalist? Would you have published that story or not? Because again, we are operating under the guise of the people have a right to know. So I'll take a couple of responses before we move on. If you were in my shoe, would you have published? Would you not have published? Because I was very, very lucky that things worked out reasonably well for me to say, all right, there's a reason why I didn't publish again, yes? And I'll hold that to myself for now. But let me ask the question again. If you were in my position, would you have published? Would you not have published? Did I do the right thing in your opinion, or did I not? Because insecurity still persists today, okay? So maybe my actions even aggravated that in hindsight now. So we'll take two answers, please. Just put up your hand, and Charlie will give you the floor very quickly.
Laurie, I've asked you to unmute.
Thank you, ma'am, once again.
Thank you.
Concerning if I'm to be an investigative journalism, how publish the news? Thank you.
Say that again. Laurie, can you repeat that? I didn't get what you said. It's my end network, I'm afraid. Or Charlie, if you heard what he said, if you could please relate to me. Yes.
I said, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Go ahead.
I said if I'm to be an investigative journalism, I'm an investigative journalist, I will publish the news, sir.
Okay, you would publish. All right. Thank you, Laurie. Anyone else? Just one last one, please.
I can see Tosin's hand. I don't know if it's the last question.
It is the last question.
But I've asked you to unmute.
Tosin, you get the lucky last spot.
Sorry, it's the last question. I will raise my hand now.
All right, Tosin, go on then.
Okay,
thank you for the slot. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, yes. About the question of publishing or not. In that context, I feel like you could do something about it, which you did. So I think that was the right call to make. I've not delved so much into it, but I know there's something called solutions journalism. I want to believe this is part of the things it seeks to address, because for me, this is the same logic behind someone showing up at an accident scene, and instead of offering first aid, you pull out your phone to document what happened for social media or whatever it is. So if there are instances where you can move the needle, I think you should. But the idea of communicating news as a journalist is to inform, to educate, and to get the right people to make informed decisions. So I think you made the right call. If I thought of it in your circumstance, I would have done the same thing. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Tosin. Now, to end that part of the conversation, the reason I did not publish is I just come from Abuja. There was fear in the land. And my reasoning then was, if I publish this, I may rob the people of one of the last threads of hope that we have in our military to be able to defend us. Hope is a very important part of governance. If you take hope from a person, you create a situation that is unpleasant. Desperation creates certain things. Something, it could open the door to anarchy. So I really weighed it, and I thought to myself, if I put this out, people will probably think, if the military is doing this, who will help us? Years later, I did not know that you would, I don't know how many of you can remember, a retired Lieutenant General, former Chief of Army Staff, retired General T.Y. Njuma. And he made a speech once in Taraba. I forget what it was. It was he was given a speech somewhere, and he talked about the military regarding insecurity. And he said the military collude. They collude. If you do not fight for yourselves, you will all die. Those are the words of General T.Y. Anjima. In my opinion, that is not good. Somebody of that standing, somebody who has the power of suggestion that he has, somebody who is looked at to be one of the people who understands how governance has been in Nigeria. He's been there right from the start. As I said, I'm third generation military, so we're very good family friends. For somebody like that to utter those words, I think was a reckless management of information. It could have caused anything. People could have started running for the hills. If this man says we are on our own, what do we do? The last thing you want to do is for people to take to arms in the name of defending themselves because the state has either failed to, or the state has now become the enemy. If you put that picture in the minds of people, you possibly open a door to anarchy. That's why I said information management is a very delicate thing. Very, very delicate. I don't know how many of you remember the former CBN director, the late Obadiah Lafia, who gave an interview on one of the radio stations where he said that the security agencies are killing people. He was referring to some killings in the Middle Belt and part of the country. The station ended up being sanctioned. There was outcry over freedom of speech and so on and so forth. Again, you need to look at statements like this from people like that from a perspective of national security and the panic it can cause. One of the rules that governs the broadcast industry is we cannot incite people. As a broadcaster, I cannot go on there and tell people, oh, go to the streets, take to the streets, protest against the government. This life is not good. They should do something. I'm not allowed to do that as a broadcaster. As a private citizen, I have the liberty to do what I want. The reason is I have the power of suggestion. I cannot incite people because if I incite you to go out and something happens, it is on me. If violence occurs, lives are lost, it is on me because I incited you to go out. So incitement is a Class A offense. It could see you get heavily fined and maybe even see your license revoked because it's a huge responsibility you've been given. You've been given the license to address millions of people. It must be done responsibly because using the wrong words will lead to a loss of life. Again, I take you back to the Rwandan genocide. The word cockroach, that's how it started. Then they made a song about it. And before you knew it, people started to kill what they considered to be cockroaches, other human beings. So we need to be very careful with how we manage information. So in closing, to strengthen the fourth estate in our dear country, Nigeria, it's going to take women and men who are deeply rooted in the principles of service. Now, this group of individuals is better placed to fight off the temptation to misinform the people or look the other way when they come across wrongdoing. The state of our economy and the quality of life here makes it pretty challenging for people in my industry to stay true to our principles and ethics. The foundation is very important. The character of the person is very important. But please, let's not despair, okay? Because all hope is not lost. I love my country. I've got green, white, green in my veins. This is my belief. All hope is not lost because I'm sure that if you look very closely, you will find these upright members of society among us. That's people who choose to do the right thing. These people are the sentinels of our democracy. So having said that, I want to say thank you to the Electoral College for the opportunity to facilitate this topic. I absolutely am totally honored. And that's it for me for now. Chalia?
Hey, thank you very much, sir, for the very insightful and interesting class. It's been really educating and engaging. So right about now, we'll just go into questions and answers. If you have any question, you can raise your hands or put your questions in the chat box. Okay, I have David. I'll ask you to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you very much, sir. I really enjoyed your class.
Thank you.
Yes, let me call it class because it was really educative. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I have worked for many years in the broadcast industry, not news media, but broadcast generally, programming and all. And I'm happy I'm part of this session. My question will tail off from how you ended this session about your experience at the military camp up north.
Yes.
Where do you draw the line in broader terms now? Where do you draw the line between what can incite and publishing the facts. And by that, maybe an example I can give. We're all familiar with the instance of Julian Assange and all that happened, US, UK, and all that. Locally, we'll have the likes of the investigative journalists who are in the news for one reason or the other. I don't know if to narrow it down with clear examples, but like the instance where David Hundeyin published that military memo when the whole Nigeria incident was ongoing. Maybe not directly speaking to that event, except you want to, but for instances of national security like that, where your views will differ depending on which side of the divide you're either in government or not in government. What, as a journalist, should be the right course of action? Neutral, independent, objective. Thank you.
So do you want to take all the questions first before you answer? Hello, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. I was muted. Yeah, let me take like 2, 3 each. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Danladi, I've asked you to unmute.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for the very educating session. I have 3 questions. So the first is how does a journalist reconcile this culture of like wrong appropriation of some of the dividing lines we have as a people, like ethnicity, religion, and even other sentiments when it comes to the reportage of like maybe government activities? Because sometimes when you pick some news items to read, maybe sometimes within the paragraph or even sometimes the headlines are giving some totalizing ideas about a particular group of people. So how does, a journalist reconcile some of these differences? Then can a media house be partisan? In my state where I am here on the plateau, there's a media house that I really think, they are partisan from, their pedigree and even their antecedents. It suggests that they're a partisan media house. Is that allowed, or how is it checked? Yeah, my last question is, can a journalist report, the activity of a public office holder without the permission of, that public office holder? Because there was a rep member, I think, or so, that I heard him say one time that he doesn't appreciate it if he gives or offers any intervention to his constituents and, such an intervention is captured and publicized. He feels it is insulting to his constituents and all of that. So can a journalist go ahead to publish any, report as from such events without the permission of, the person who is convening such?
Okay, and Larry, got it. Charlie, let me start online. There's a question from Ama Ewong, very important online. Ama Ewong says, we've been told several times that the masses are the fourth estate or organ of government, but today you're telling us that the journalists are the fourth organ of government. What's the difference, please? Again, the difference, I think it's in the wording and the terminology. Sometimes here in Nigeria, we sweep things under the carpet and we say, oh, that is semantics. Or we say, hey, English is not my papa's language. Truth of the matter is words matter. Okay, if you don't get the words right, you can easily misconstrue a thing. The media is called the fourth estate of the realm in the context I have given you. It's been credited to those 2 historians, those 2 Englishmen. Okay, I've given it to you in the context of parliaments by virtue of the power of the media taking information from the House of Commons, where matters of governance were debated, taking that information to the people. They were the conveyors of that information. And then they had 3 realms, okay? The 4th realm being the journalists. That's the context of the 4th estate of the realm. Now, being the 4th organ of government, I can see how that works. But maybe not necessarily in the journalistic perspective, because if you ask me in the context of the people, I think people and governance are one and the same. We tend to make a distinction in Nigeria where we say government as if we are talking about other people, them versus us kind of thing. But the truth is, in a democracy, that line to me becomes even more blurred because the people have a responsibility to themselves. They have a responsibility, they have civic responsibilities to their country. They have a responsibility to be engaged in the activities of governance that goes beyond casting your vote. A greater part of our responsibility to engage in governance is to hold them to account. This is where the media comes in. We've got the skills and the know-how. We go out, we get this information, we bring it, but we can't do anything about it. I can't prosecute anyone I see doing something foul. I don't have that constitutional power. But the people can rise up and say, look, we're not happy about this. We want something done about it. And how does it work? It works because you have representatives in parliament. You've got senators, you've got House of Reps members that have the constitutional power to take action against wrongdoing. Politics is a numbers game. If you and your uncle feel a certain way about something, not much is going to happen. But if you can organize and get the numbers right, you can start knocking on doors from your ward councillor to your local government chairman and so on and so forth, state House of Assembly member to your state governor to your National Assembly members. That's how democracy works. Engage, numbers, engage, demands action within the ambits of the law, of course. But if I go and find information and I bring it to you and you just sit down and you move off to the next scandal, nothing's going to happen. Okay, so the people in governance, I think we are interrelated. We interface in a democracy, not a dictatorship. In a democracy, the people do have power to decide and determine. You've got representation. We in the media need to educate people how to use that power. So I hope that answers that online question. Now, David asked a question about drawing the line. Where do I draw the line regarding, investigative journalism? Where do I draw the line between what I do, what's to reveal, what not to, and so on and so forth? I'll tell you this, David. I'm not bothered about individuals. I'm more about strengthening the institution. It's like the presidency. If the president does something wrong, I will not belittle him. I will not say Bola did this or Tinubu did that or Bat did that. Because in my humble opinion, the day he was sworn into office, the day he took the oath of office to serve as the president of this country, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in my humble opinion, went on holiday. What we have now is an institution known as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So I need to first of all make that distinction. So if I look into his activities and I come up with something wrongdoing and whatnot, I do so to the end of strengthening the institution. I'm not bothered about Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the citizen. That's a different person. But if President Tinubu has done something that I feel has weakened the institution of our presidency, and I'm a journalist and I come across it, whatever actions I choose to take in that regard is to one end and one end alone. How do I strengthen the institution of the presidency? Because that is our highest national symbol. So that would be my guiding compass when it comes to making decisions going forwards. If it were a trivial personalized thing, yeah, it can get messy. In the course of hunting down an individual, you could burn down an institution because these officers, they're temporal. People will serve and leave. But if you damage the faith and confidence that people have in the institution, you're creating a big problem. We need to strengthen the institution, and that means holding the custodians, the people we've given these institutions to hold in trust. We hold them to account, not because of them, but because of the institutions. That would be my guiding compass in where I draw my line. So I cannot tell you to be here, 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 or here. Like in the case of the situation in the Northeast, I didn't want to weaken the military institution at that time when morale was low among the citizenry who started to question our ability to defend ourselves from the terrorists. I was very vocal. I'm so outspoken against the terrorists. I never named them on air deliberately because I hope their names will be forgotten in history, but I hope we remember how they came to do what they came to do so that we learn and prevent a recurrence. But I chose not to name them because I hope they fade into oblivion. My belief is that situation created itself because the crack in the system allowed it to happen. I need to find that crack and seal it up, not to further weaken it. Okay, so these are the things that I tend to use to guide me in how I go about information management. Then Ladi, you were talking about basically, we call it identity politics. Here at Radio Now, at Daria Media, Kadria Ahmed, my managing director, and myself and our team, we abhor identity politics. I hate it. And I'm going to say this now, again. Every ethnic group has its own fair share of criminals and clerics. None is purer than the other. None. What you have are human beings who do certain things based on any number of reasons. So these ethnic labels, they are not helping us at all. I come from the northeastern part of the country. My ancestry, mother, father, grandfather, this, that, the other. I wasn't raised there. We have a family home there that we go and visit, like some families. So I have not grown up in that community, which means I have not been educated by the community. I've got to my academic education, and other societies and communities have contributed to making me who I am. But my part of the country where I'm from, my so-called ethnic group, my so-called village and this, that, the other, how much of the characteristics of people who are born and live in that part of the country, how much of those characteristics are embedded in me beyond that is me claiming, oh, my mother and father, my grandfather and grandparents are from there. Beyond that, really, how much of the people's attributes do I display? So my lineage is important to me. It tells me who I am and who I come from. That's what it tells me. But I am Camry Apollo. I'm responsible for my actions. You will miss the mark if you judge my ethnic group based on my actions. I am me. I'm different from my brother, my siblings, same mother, same father. So judge me by my actions, judge me by myself. Identity politics serves us no good. So when it comes to reporting issues, we set identity politics aside. The second question you asked, you said, can media houses be partisan? Well, we see that. If you watch US politics, right now they're gearing up for their presidential elections. You can draw clear lines of distinction between, let's say, a CNN and a Fox. One leans towards the Republican Party, one leans towards the Democratic Party in their reportage. If you want to get the full picture, don't just stay on one channel, go around all of them. And I don't know what the reason is. It's not ideal regarding information management because information will be presented in line with what speaks to whatever the parties want to present. Does that help the people? Clearly, no. I think the people should be in receipt of all the information and let them draw their conclusions. It's not for me to tell people what to do. It's simply to present them with the facts, to open up their options, their choices, so they make better decisions. So that's how it works. And if you look at the media space globally, media is generally owned by big business and politics. There's a marriage between politics and big business, which many of us here in Nigeria think is wrong. But if you look at democratic countries, development is driven by the private sector. So it's clear to say, I think it's safe to say, countries that have lobbyists, it helps their development. Bringing it back to Nigeria, Dangote, for example, should have lobbyists with government because he's a big conglomerate. He's a huge employer of labor. He's a huge driver of the economy and the GDP. The government should create policies to strengthen people like the Dangotes, to open up more jobs for people, but not to create monopolies. Okay, so that the market isn't hijacked, because the government cannot provide the jobs itself. The government can provide the environment for the private sector to thrive. So if you look around the world, the global north, that's what they call them, these economically advanced countries, there's a close relationship between big business and politics. The businessman wants to grow, and the government hopes that as you are growing, the area is getting better developed, infrastructure-wise, employment-wise for the people to keep them happy, and so on and so forth. So there's a close relationship between them. If it's manipulated and abused to the detriment of the people, then it becomes a problem. You also talked about journalists. Can journalists report activities that were carried out privately? I don't know how to answer that question. The person who does a deed that doesn't want it publicized, I think, is entitled to his privacy. But the person he does the good deed for, if that person goes to the press, then the media has not done anything wrong. Because somebody approached the media and said, hey, this man did this good thing for me. Please help me thank him. If the media reports that, I think the media does that in the hopes of encouraging other people, I would hope, to toe the same line, to look out for their brother, be your brother's keeper. But the person who does the act that wants his privacy, I think, should be entitled to his privacy if it's up to him. But in this case, it's not up to him because he's interacted with another person and the other person has made it public. Unless, you want to tell the person you are assisting that, please, do not make this public or sign a non-disclosure agreement. Beyond that, if a non-disclosure agreement has been signed, then the media, I think it's a gray area. Should the media wade into it? If the media is aware that a non-disclosure agreement has been signed, then clearly I think the media should not publicize the matter. But if the media is not aware that any sort of non-disclosure agreement has been signed, then there might be a case made on behalf of the media, because it means you did not knowingly violate something which you never knew existed. It's a gray area. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go further than that. But I think when it comes to privacy, people should be entitled to their privacy. For example, if somebody's been chosen to be the Minister of Power, we should be focused on their capacity to improve the power sector. So when we start to report on his girlfriends, his boyfriends, and this, that, the other, beyond speaking to the character of this person you were put in public office, what good does it serve you, his sexual orientation? How does that affect the job he's there to do? So different media houses have different ways of approaching what we consider to be private personal information. Personally, if I use private personal information, it would be to speak to the character of the person and not to feed the gossip mill. I'm not driven to gossip, I'm sorry, okay? I hope that answers these questions. Chalia?
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for helping us to answer those very interesting questions. So because of our time, we won't be able to take more questions. This is already 7:01. So we are just going to call this an evening. So on behalf of the Electoral College, BOT and region, we say very much, Mr. Camry, for this very interesting class. It's always great having you around, and it'll be great to still see you again in the next cohort. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, students, for Thank you very much, students, for listening and staying up to this time. So see you all again tomorrow evening by 5. Good night, everyone. Good night, sir.